December 9, 1944, 3rd Army Headquarters, Nancy, France. A cold Monday morning cuts through the converted French military barracks, where American staff officers sip coffee and study maps showing their eastward advance into Germany. The war, they believe, is nearly won. Christmas might even come in Berlin. Colonel Oscar Koch stands at the front of the briefing room, 37 red markers covering his intelligence map. Each marker represents a German division, each one supposedly depleted, broken, incapable of offensive action. But Koch sees something else. He sees a pattern that makes his stomach tighten. In the room sits General George S. Patton, jaw set, eyes fixed on Koch's map. Around them, staff officers shuffle papers. They've heard these intelligence briefings before. Endless tallies of German units, fuel shortages, ammunition dumps. Important data, certainly, but nothing that suggests imminent danger. The Germans are finished. Everyone knows it. Koch clears his throat. His voice cuts through the morning haze. Gentlemen, I believe the enemy is preparing a major counteroffensive. He points to the Ardennes sector, north of their position. Within 7 days, possibly sooner, the Germans will attack here with overwhelming force. 15 divisions, perhaps more, including 8 panzer divisions currently unaccounted for. The room erupts in muffled laughter. One major actually snorts. The Germans launching an offensive. Impossible. They're barely holding the Siegfried Line. Allied intelligence from Supreme Headquarters says German reserves are non-existent. General Eisenhower himself has declared the Wehrmacht incapable of significant offensive operations. But Koch continues, methodical, relentless. He presents aerial reconnaissance showing unprecedented rail traffic. He displays interrogation reports from POWs mentioning secret orders. He points to fuel dumps, ammunition stockpiles, and 15 known panzer divisions, only 5 of which are currently in contact with Allied forces. 10 divisions missing, vanished, and Koch knows exactly where they've gone. The Germans will strike with a 2-to-1 numerical advantage, Koch states flatly. They favor surprise. The Ardennes is lightly defended. Terrain favors infiltration. If I'm correct, this attack will threaten our entire northern flank. What Koch doesn't know, what none of them can know, is that in exactly 7 days, at 5:30 a.m. on December 16, 1944, over 200,000 German troops and 1,000 tanks will smash into unsuspecting American positions with devastating fury. The Battle of the Bulge will become the bloodiest single battle American forces fight in World War II. 75,000 American casualties, 19,000 killed. But Koch's warning, dismissed by nearly every senior Allied commander, will save thousands of lives and change the course of the war. This is the story of the man who saw the pattern everyone else missed. By December 1944, Allied commanders suffer from what historians later call victory disease. Since D-Day on June 6th, American, British, and Canadian forces have driven across France, liberated Paris, and pushed deep into Belgium and Luxembourg. The massive Allied offensive appears unstoppable. Germany bleeds from both ends, Americans pressing from the west, Soviets crushing from the east. Surely the Reich teeters on collapse. Allied intelligence reinforces this optimism with staggering confidence. At Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, analysts compile daily reports showing German strength deteriorating. Fuel shortages cripple Wehrmacht mobility. Manpower reserves evaporate. Industrial production crumbles under Allied bombing. Every metric suggests Germany faces imminent defeat. General Omar Bradley, commanding the 12th Army Group, studies his intelligence summaries and sees confirmation. The Germans can barely mount local counterattacks, let alone strategic offenses. General Dwight Eisenhower reviews the same data. and plans his own offensive toward Frankfurt for late December. The Ardennes sector, that heavily forested, difficult terrain along the Belgian-German border, presents minimal threat. Only 4 American divisions, many of them green or recovering from combat, hold an 85-mile front there. Nobody worries. It's a quiet sector where new units train and battle-worn divisions rest. But this confidence masks a catastrophic intelligence failure. Allied commanders rely heavily on Ultra, the secret British operation that decrypts German radio communications. Ultra has proven devastatingly effective throughout the war, providing Allied commanders advance warning of German intentions. But Hitler, paranoid and cunning, imposes total radio silence for his Ardennes offensive. Nothing transmitted electronically, all orders hand-carried, no pattern for Ultra to detect. Meanwhile, German deception operations succeed brilliantly. Wehrmacht units maintain normal radio chatter in their current positions while actual divisions quietly move under cover of darkness. They transport entire panzer divisions by rail through Frankfurt, heading west toward the Ardennes. They assemble nearly 500,000 men, thousands of tanks, and mountains of supplies within striking distance of American lines. Allied aerial reconnaissance occasionally glimpses unusual activity, but analysts dismiss it. Probably local redeployments, defensive preparations, nothing indicating offensive capability. The few intelligence officers who raise concerns get overruled. Colonel Benjamin Dixon, 1st Army's G2, predicts on December 14th that a German attack in the Ardennes appears imminent. His superiors ignore him. At Bradley's headquarters, intelligence officers assure their commander the Germans lack resources for major operations. Even battlefield indicators, increased German patrol activity, civilians fleeing border areas, captured documents mentioning mysterious offensive preparations, get rationalized away. The prevailing expert consensus declares offensive operations beyond German capability. The Reich fights desperately but defensively. Any German attack would be small-scale, local, designed merely to spoil Allied offensive preparations. Senior commanders stake their reputations on this assessment. Planning staffs design elaborate offensives into Germany's heartland. Nobody positions reserves to counter a German thrust. The stakes couldn't be higher. The Ardennes, if penetrated, provides a direct route to Antwerp, Belgium, the crucial port through which Allied supplies flow. Capture Antwerp, and the Allied war effort strangles. Worse, a successful German offensive could shatter Allied cohesion, potentially fracturing the Anglo-American alliance. Hitler gambles everything on this desperate throw. He strips his Eastern Front, mobilizing final reserves. Success might force the Western Allies to negotiate. Failure means Germany's collapse. But across Supreme Headquarters, from Eisenhower down through Army Group to Corps level, Allied intelligence staffs collectively fail to detect the gathering storm. They possess fragments of evidence, rail movements, troop concentrations, POW statements, but lack analysts willing to challenge the comfortable assumption of German weakness. They suffer from mirror imaging, assuming the Germans think rationally about their hopeless strategic position. Only one intelligence officer, a colonel in Patton's Third Army, connects the fragments into a terrifying picture, and almost nobody will listen. Oscar Koch possesses exactly 0 qualifications that should make him America's most prescient military intelligence officer. Born January 10, 1897 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to a German Jewish immigrant family, Koch grows up in working-class neighborhoods, attending Milwaukee public schools. He graduates from North Division High School, and that's where his formal education ends. No college degree, no Ivy League pedigree, no prestigious military academy background. In 1915, at age 18, young Oscar Koch walks into the recruiting office, for Troop A, 1st Wisconsin Cavalry, and enlists as a private. He chases Pancho Villa along the Mexican border under General John J. Pershing, learning cavalry tactics and desert reconnaissance. When America enters World War I in 1917, Koch receives a commission as an artillery officer. He serves competently but unremarkably, watching the war end from stateside postings. The interwar years find Koch drifting through various unglamorous assignments. He serves as a cavalry troop commander. He works as a signal officer, dealing with radios and communications. Nobody marks him for greatness. He lacks connections, wealth, or academy credentials that typically propel officers towards senior positions. He's a journeyman officer, competent but undistinguished, exactly the kind of middle management soldier the Army produces by the thousands. Koch has never received formal intelligence training, no courses at Fort Leavenworth, no specialized schooling in the emerging science of military intelligence. When the Army assigns him as an intelligence officer in the late 1930s, he essentially teaches himself, reading voraciously, studying enemy doctrine, developing his own analytical methods through trial and error. But Koch possesses something rare and invaluable. He thinks differently. While most intelligence officers focus on counting enemy divisions and tallying equipment, Koch studies patterns. He reads German military philosophy. He analyzes Wehrmacht operational doctrine. He understands that intelligence isn't just about knowing what the enemy has, but predicting what the enemy will do. When George Patton takes command of the 2nd Armored Division in 1940, he inherits Koch as his G2, his chief intelligence officer. The two men form an unlikely partnership. Patton, flamboyant and aristocratic, clashes with the quiet, methodical Koch. But Patton quickly recognizes Koch's talent. Koch doesn't just report facts, he provides actionable analysis. He warns Patton not just of enemy capabilities, but of enemy intentions. Through the North Africa campaign, the Sicily invasion, and now the drive across France, Koch refines his craft. He creates comprehensive intelligence training programs for 3rd Army personnel, teaching them to think like the enemy. He establishes intelligence sections that integrate multiple sources: aerial reconnaissance, POW interrogations, captured documents, signal intercepts, frontline reports, synthesizing fragments into coherent pictures. By December 1944, Koch has served as Patton's G2 for 4 years. He's earned Patton's complete trust, a rare commodity from the demanding general. Patton once stated, "I ought to know what I'm doing. I have the best damned intelligence officer in any United States command." Now, on this cold December morning, Koch needs that trust more than ever, because what he's about to predict will sound insane. And if he's wrong, his career ends. But if he's right, and nobody listens, thousands of American soldiers will die unnecessarily. Koch's workshop isn't secret laboratories or high-tech equipment. It's a cramped office filled with maps, aerial photographs, interrogation transcripts, and endless cups of bad coffee. His tools are crude by modern standards: colored pencils, pushpins, hand-drawn charts tracking enemy unit movements. But Koch wields these simple instruments with surgical precision. For months, Koch has tracked something that bothers him. 15 known German panzer divisions exist in the Western Theater. These armored divisions represent Germany's most powerful offensive weapons: tanks, mechanized infantry, artillery, the Wehrmacht's striking power. Throughout October and November 1944, Koch's team confirms locations for only 5 of these divisions. They're in contact with Allied forces fighting defensive actions along the Siegfried Line. But 10 divisions? Missing. Unaccounted for. Koch's analysts search desperately. Aerial reconnaissance photographs German rail yards. Photo interpreters count trains. Unprecedented numbers of trains. heading west from Frankfurt. But to where? Koch requests night photo reconnaissance missions targeting railroad marshalling yards and highway intersections deep behind German lines. The photographs reveal massive movement, but clouds and darkness obscure final destinations. POW interrogations provide disturbing fragments. A captured German mentions secret orders, sending English-speaking personnel to Osnabrück for training in reconnaissance and sabotage. Another describes seeing American uniforms being collected and shipped to unknown units. A third speaks of fuel and ammunition dumps being established behind the Ardennes sector. Koch plots every data point on his map. Red markers for confirmed German divisions, blue markers for ammunition dumps, green markers for fuel stockpiles, orange markers for reported but unconfirmed movements. The pattern emerges gradually, like a photograph developing in chemical solution. Those missing panzer divisions aren't scattered across Germany. They're concentrating, massing, preparing. Koch studies German military doctrine obsessively. He reads captured German field manuals. He analyzes Wehrmacht operational patterns from Poland, France, Russia. The Germans favor the Schwerpunkt, the decisive point, concentrated overwhelming force against weakness to achieve breakthrough. They excel at surprise, deception, rapid exploitation, and Koch sees the Ardennes sector as textbook Schwerpunkt, lightly defended, difficult terrain that channels attacking forces toward high-value objectives, terrain that Americans dismiss as impassable for major operations. On December 8th, Koch presents his preliminary findings to Patton. The general listens intently. Koch shows him the map, the missing divisions, the rail movements, the fuel dumps. Patton asks sharp questions. Koch answers each methodically. Finally, Patton stands. Schedule a full staff briefing tomorrow morning. I want everyone to hear this. That evening, Koch refines his presentation. He knows what he's about to say violates every assumption guiding Allied operations. He knows his colleagues will think he's crazy. That's impossible, they'll say. The Germans don't have the fuel. Ultra shows nothing. You're seeing patterns that don't exist. But Koch has learned to trust his analysis over consensus. Intelligence officers who chase consensus rather than truth fail their commanders. Koch's job isn't to make comfortable predictions. It's to protect Third Army from surprise. And right now, the biggest surprise of the war approaches like a freight train in the darkness. The next morning's briefing will determine whether anyone listens and whether thousands of American soldiers live or die. December 9th, 1944, 9 a.m. The briefing room falls silent as Koch begins his presentation. He's prepared meticulously, knowing skepticism awaits. He starts with facts, building his case methodically. Gentlemen, current Allied intelligence assesses German capability as follows: severe fuel shortages, depleted manpower reserves, defensive posture only. This assessment appears in daily summaries from Supreme Headquarters. I believe this assessment is catastrophically wrong. Koch walks to the map. 15 German panzer divisions exist in the Western Theater. We can confirm positions for only 5. 10 divisions, representing perhaps 150,000 combat troops and over 1,000 tanks, are unaccounted for. He taps the Ardennes sector. Aerial reconnaissance shows unprecedented rail activity moving west through Frankfurt. Night photography confirms massive troop movements. POW interrogations mention offensive preparations, English-speaking infiltrators, and captured American uniforms. A major interrupts. Colonel, with respect, Ultra shows no indication of offensive preparations. Surely if the Germans were planning something significant, we'd intercept communications. Koch expected this. Ultra remains silent precisely because the Germans have imposed radio silence. All orders are hand-carried. This level of communications discipline is itself significant. It indicates deliberate deception for a major operation. Another officer chimes in. But the Germans lack fuel for offensive operations. Every intelligence estimate confirms critical fuel shortages. Yes, sir, Koch responds, which is why they're positioning fuel dumps forward. We've identified at least 6 major fuel storage areas behind the Ardennes sector. They're pre-positioning supplies specifically to support rapid exploitation after breakthrough. The room buzzes with conversation. Koch continues relentlessly. Terrain analysis supports this assessment. The Ardennes provides concealment for assembly. The sector is held by 4 American divisions across 85 miles. That's roughly 1 division per 20 miles. Normal defensive doctrine recommends 1 division per 5 to 7 miles. We're dangerously thin there. And their objective? Patton asks, though Koch suspects the general already knows the answer. Antwerp, sir. Drive northwest, split British and American forces, capture the port that supplies our entire operation. It's operationally brilliant if they can achieve surprise and exploitation. And gentlemen, they will achieve surprise everywhere except here, because we're the only headquarters that's detected this buildup. The skepticism intensifies. This is pure speculation, a staff officer declares. You're connecting unrelated data points. Rail movements could be redeployments to defensive positions. Missing divisions might be refitting in Germany proper. You're predicting a massive German offensive based on circumstantial evidence. Koch's voice remains calm but firm. Yes, sir. Intelligence always deals with incomplete information. But pattern analysis combined with doctrinal understanding allows predictive assessment. The Germans favor offensive action. They're masters of operational surprise. Given their strategic desperation and tactical opportunity, an Ardennes offensive represents their logical course of action. The room erupts. Voices overlap. Arguments flare. Half the staff thinks Koch has lost his mind. How can one colonel predict a massive German offensive when all of Supreme Headquarters with vastly more resources and access to Ultra sees nothing? Patton stands, silencing the room. His face is unreadable. Then he turns to Koch. Oscar, if you're right, when will they attack? Between December 15th and December 18th, sir. They need good weather for concealment, but not so bad it immobilizes their armor. They'll attack at dawn to maximize the first day's penetration before we can respond, most likely December 16th. Patton nods slowly. The room holds its breath. Finally, Patton speaks. We'll be in a position to meet whatever happens. He looks at his staff. Continue planning for our Frankfurt offensive, but Koch's team will begin outline planning for contingency operations to the north. If the Germans attack as predicted, I want Third Army ready to counterattack within 72 hours. If you're finding this story as fascinating as we are, hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you the untold stories of military history that changed the world, stories you won't find in textbooks. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. The meeting ends with divided opinions. Some staff officers leave convinced Koch has embarrassed himself. Others, watching Patton's serious demeanor, wonder if maybe, just maybe, the quiet colonel from Milwaukee has seen something real. 7 days remain until 200,000 German soldiers crash into American lines, and only one American army will be ready. December 16, 1944, 5:30 a.m., the Ardennes sector explodes. German artillery, 2,000 guns concentrated in the narrow attack frontage, unleashes hellfire. Within minutes, American positions across 85 miles disintegrate under the bombardment. Then the infantry comes, wave after wave of Wehrmacht soldiers, many from elite SS divisions, emerging from morning fog like gray ghosts. American units, caught completely by surprise, fight desperately. Some positions hold briefly before being overwhelmed. Others collapse immediately. Communication lines severed by artillery prevent coherent response. Division headquarters lose contact with frontline battalions. Chaos spreads faster than information. At 3rd Army headquarters, now relocated to Luxembourg, Koch receives first reports by mid-morning. The fragmented messages confirm his worst predictions. Massive German attack. Multiple divisions, breakthrough in several sectors. American casualties mounting catastrophically. Koch marks his map grimly. Every red marker representing predicted German divisions now moves forward, exactly as he forecasted. Patton strides into the operations center, face grim but unsurprised. "How bad, Oscar?" "Everything we predicted, sir. 15 to 20 divisions. Heavy armor. They've achieved complete surprise everywhere except here." 1st Army is reeling. 8 corps communications are shattered. The Germans are exploiting toward Bastogne. What Koch doesn't yet know is that the Battle of the Bulge will become the largest single battle fought by American forces in World War II. Over 600,000 American troops will eventually engage. American casualties will reach 89,000, including 19,000 killed, the bloodiest battle in U.S. Army history. The Germans achieve initial success beyond their wildest expectations, driving 40 miles into Allied lines, creating a massive bulge in the front that gives the battle its name. But at Supreme Headquarters, chaos reigns. Eisenhower, Bradley, and other senior commanders scramble to understand what's happening. Intelligence staffs that confidently declared German offensive capability impossible now desperately reassess. Bradley initially dismisses the attack as a local spoiling offensive. Only after reports multiply throughout December 16th does the scale of catastrophe become apparent. Eisenhower holds an emergency conference on December 19th at Verdun, France. Gathered are Bradley, Patton, and other senior commanders. The meeting's purpose: coordinate response to the German offensive, threatening to split Allied armies and possibly reach Antwerp. Eisenhower opens grimly. "The present situation is to be regarded as one of opportunity for us and not of disaster." He looks around the table. "George, how long before 3rd Army can counterattack north toward Bastogne?" The room falls silent. 3rd Army currently attacks eastward toward Frankfurt, turning an entire army 90 degrees, reversing logistics, coordinating new attack axes. Military professionals know this requires weeks of preparation. Patton answers immediately. December 22nd, 3 days, 3 divisions initially, full army strength within 6 days. The room erupts. "Impossible!" several officers exclaim. Turning an entire army in 72 hours violates every principle of military logistics and planning. But Patton smiles thinly. "Gentlemen, my staff has been planning this contingency since December 9th. My G2 predicted this attack, its location, its timing, and its probable German objective. We've already issued preparatory orders. 3rd Army will attack on schedule." Bradley later writes in his memoir, "I was absolutely astonished. To disengage 3 divisions in full attack, turn them 90 degrees, and drive them north through winter weather over icy roads seemed impossible." But Patton wasn't joking. Patton turns to Eisenhower. "Give me 3 days. We'll hit their southern flank hard enough to stop the whole offensive." Eisenhower approves immediately. The conference ends with Patton's audacious promise hanging in the air. Outside, Patton finds Koch. "Oscar, you bought us those 3 days. If we'd started planning on December 16th instead of December 9th, we'd need 2 weeks. You gave us the head start. Now we deliver. True to his word, Patton executes one of military history's most impressive maneuvers. Third Army disengages from its Frankfurt offensive, wheels 90 degrees north, and on December 22nd, exactly when Patton promised, slams into the German southern flank. Leading the attack is the 4th Armored Division, spearheading toward Bastogne, where the 101st Airborne Division holds desperately against overwhelming German forces. The fighting is savage. Winter weather, snow, ice, brutal cold, compounds combat intensity. Soldiers freeze at their positions. Vehicles slide off icy roads. Supply lines struggle through blizzards. But Third Army keeps attacking, grinding northward, applying relentless pressure against German forces attempting to exploit westward. On December 26th, exactly 10 days after Koch's predicted attack date, elements of the 4th Armored Division's 37th Tank Battalion break through to Bastogne. Lieutenant Charles Bogus, leading a column of Sherman tanks, radios simply, "Come here, this is the 4th Armored." The 101st Airborne, surrounded and battered, survives. The siege lifts. Bastogne holds. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video if you're appreciating this story. It helps us reach more history enthusiasts like yourself. And share this with anyone who appreciates stories of incredible intelligence work that saved thousands of lives. The German offensive, deprived of critical road junctions at Bastogne and hammered by Patton's counterattack, loses momentum. Weather clears on December 23rd, allowing Allied air power to devastate German columns. By late December, the Wehrmacht offensive stalls. Throughout January 1945, Allied counterattacks squeeze the Bulge, recapturing lost ground. By January 25th, the front returns roughly to its December 15th position. The final accounting is grim. American forces suffer 89,000 casualties, 19,000 killed, the bloodiest battle in American military history. British forces add another 1,400 casualties. The Germans lose between 80,000 and 100,000 men, along with hundreds of irreplaceable tanks and vehicles. Hitler's desperate gamble fails catastrophically, consuming the Reich's final reserves. But historians later recognize that without Koch's prediction and Patton's preparation, casualties could have been far worse. Third Army's rapid counterattack prevented German exploitation toward Antwerp. Bastogne's survival denied Wehrmacht forces critical road networks. The early contingency planning that Koch initiated on December 9th gave Third Army a 7-day head start, the difference between coordinated response and desperate improvisation. Koch's pattern analysis, dismissed by almost every other Allied intelligence officer, proved devastatingly accurate. Attack date, correct. Attack location, correct. German forces committed, correct. Strategic objective, correct. And only Patton's Third Army, prepared because one quiet colonel trusted his analysis over comfortable consensus, stood ready when the storm broke. After the war ends in May 1945, Oscar Koch receives his star, promoted to brigadier general. He organizes and commands the United States Army's first peacetime intelligence school at Fort Riley, Kansas, codifying the lessons learned through years of combat intelligence work. He teaches a generation of intelligence officers that intelligence isn't just counting enemy forces, it's understanding enemy thinking, predicting enemy actions, protecting forces from surprise. Koch writes extensively about his experiences. His book, G2, Intelligence for Patton, published in 1971, becomes essential reading for military intelligence professionals. In its pages, Koch explains his philosophy simply. The purpose of intelligence is to assist the commander in accomplishing his mission and to protect the command from surprise. Everything else is secondary. About the Battle of the Bulge intelligence failure, Koch writes with careful precision. Certainly there was an intelligence failure preceding the Battle of the Bulge, but it was not the total blindness to the enemy buildup, which is indicated in prevailing accounts of that historic clash. Intelligence failure connotes a breakdown in the intelligence service's collection techniques. The Allied failure leading to the tragedy of the Bulge was in evaluation and application of the intelligence information at hand. In other words, the evidence existed. Aerial photographs showed the rail movements. POW interrogations mentioned offensive preparations. Signal intelligence noted unusual German radio silence, but intelligence analysts, imprisoned by comfortable assumptions about German weakness, failed to synthesize evidence into accurate prediction. They collected fragments but couldn't assemble the picture. They had the puzzle pieces but refused to believe what the completed puzzle showed. Koch's methods, integrating multiple intelligence sources, studying enemy doctrine, challenging comfortable assumptions, trusting pattern analysis over consensus, revolutionize American military intelligence. Today, the U.S. Army's intelligence doctrine directly incorporates Koch's all-source analysis approach. Modern intelligence fusion centers combining signals intelligence, human intelligence, imagery intelligence, and open-source intelligence into comprehensive assessments operate on principles Koch pioneered in crude form 70 years ago. In 1993, the Military Intelligence Hall of Fame inducts Brigadier General Oscar Koch, recognizing his foundational contributions to modern intelligence practice. The same year, the U.S. Army Intelligence Center names Koch Barracks at Fort Huachuca in his honor. Modern intelligence officers study Koch's Battle of the Bulge prediction as a masterclass in analytical courage, the willingness to challenge consensus when evidence demands it. Koch dies on May 16, 1970, at age 73, in a Veterans Administration hospital in Marion, Illinois. He lived quietly in retirement, refusing opportunities for publicity or celebrity. Friends remember him as modest, almost shy, and comfortable with attention. He never boasted about his prediction or criticized the commanders who ignored him. Typical of Koch, he focused on lessons learned rather than assignment of blame. But veterans who served under Patton remembered differently. After the war, many soldiers learned about Koch's December 9th prediction. They understood that Third Army's readiness on December 16th came from one colonel's analytical brilliance and professional courage. Some wrote Koch letters, simple notes expressing gratitude. Because you warned us, we were ready. Because we were ready, I came home. Those letters, more than medals or promotions, measured Koch's true accomplishment. He saw the pattern everyone else missed. He trusted his analysis when consensus said otherwise. He gave his commander the truth, however uncomfortable. And thousands of soldiers survived because one quiet intelligence officer refused to be wrong. That's the lesson. Truth matters more than consensus. Evidence matters more than comfort. And sometimes the person everyone dismisses is the only one actually seeing reality.